pick up a couple of carvable fake pumpkins. I'm using a pumpkin carving tool. These are great. They come in a kit and they're really great for fake pumpkins and real ones. I'm starting by printing out my address in big bold numbers, and then I'm going to trace them onto the pumpkins. For the first number in my address, I'm going to actually cut the bottom of the pumpkin and then cut out the number 5. With all the numbers and everything cut out, it's time to start assembling. I'm going to take my fairy lights and just place them inside of each pumpkin with a battery pack hanging out. Then I can stack them on top of one another. The top pumpkin has the hole in the bottom so that the stem is still intact on top. Once I know I have everything exactly how I want it, I'm going to use a little hot glue just to secure the pumpkins to one another. Now I can add a little bit of fall decoration. I've got some faux leaves here, and I'm just going to place these around the pumpkins. I'm also going to place a few faux leaves on the plastic planter that I'm using. And finally, I'm going to hang the battery packs inside the planter, and then I'm going to place the pumpkin topiary on top. Now I've got this really cute address sign that can sit on my front porch for fall. I hope this inspired you to create one for yourself this fall. Thanks for watching Home Talk. We'll see you next time.
For this spectacular project, we're going to start with the tomato cage. Grab some green strand lights. First thing we got to do though is we got to get them secured to the top because that's where we're going to start. I'm going to put it on one of the risers first, right at the top. Once I pull it tight, I want to make sure that I go ahead and cut any excess off. And then here comes the project in the beginning. We want to start wrapping it around the top ring. Now this can be a little awkward at first because you got all these lights, but just keep them bunched up and wrap as you go. The one clue I can give you on this is do not go thin on the lights. Don't try to spread them out. I went ahead and got the longest strand I could get, and I'm just going to go all the way around, but I'm not going to pull them tight. I want as many lights around these rings as possible. And we'll go down. Once we get down there, we're going to go ahead and run it around that ring also, while also going up every single riser. As you can see on this zip tie though, I want to put it right in the corner there and hold it together. That way it won't get pulled tight and pull the zip tie up too far. Once we get all of this wrapped around, it's good to go, and we're going to take it outside. Now we're going to plug in our orange lights. I found a hedge that I got out in the front yard. What I need to do is take that tomato cage and I'm just going to put it right on the edge there. Look at that. That's going to be our stem. Next is to take those orange lights and zip tie them. This is where it's going to get plugged into the outlet or the extension cord. Take those orange lights and you're going to go up and down your hedge all the way around. Once we get it all on there and secure, it's going to look great. All we got to do is wait for night to come and light it up. Look at that. We got our little pumpkin out front, and it looks actually really good. Now, once it gets a little bit darker, watch this. That little stem just lights up. See why we don't want to go thin on the lights? We want it as bright as possible. Now, sometimes Halloween's spectacular and it's spooky, but this is a nice little pumpkin that I think Cinderella herself would be happy with.
The first thing I'm going to do is assemble the lanterns. They're really easy to put together. And then I'm going to grab a few different colors of orange paint and just paint the lanterns. This is a really thin paper, so use gentle brush strokes, but it also absorbs a lot of paint, so take your time and paint the whole thing. Then set these aside and just let them dry completely. While those pumpkins are drying, let's make some leaves and stems. So for the leaves, I just cut out a basic pumpkin leaf shape, and I'm tracing it on green paper or cardstock, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. To add a stem, I am just gluing on a green pipe cleaner, and I'm going to set this aside to dry as well. We'll twist it up into something fun when it's time to add it to the pumpkin. For the stem, grab some newspaper and cut off maybe about 2 to 3 inches. Then roll this up. I'm using newspaper because you can crunch it and manipulate it to make it look like a pumpkin stem. So I'm going to roll it up and secure it with some washi tape and kind of scrunch it into the angle that I think a pumpkin stem might look like. Then I'm just adding some brown paint and I'm going to let this dry. To get all of the words on the newspaper and the tape covered, you might need to use a couple coats of acrylic paint. Now that everything is dry, let's put this pumpkin together. So first we're going to add the leaf and the stem. So Locate the top of the pumpkin, which has this little hook, and wrap the pipe cleaner once or twice around that hook. And then that extra piece that's hanging there, I'm going to twist it around my finger and make a little curly Q. That's going to hold the leaf and stem in place. No more glue required there. Now we're going to add a light to this. These lanterns come with lights. They have an on and off feature, so you can easily turn them on at night when you want them, but you can leave them off during the day, which saves the battery. I'm just going to hang this right on the inside. It's easy to do it now before adding the stem. To add the stem, I'm just going to use a whole bunch of hot glue on the bottom and secure the stem around the hook on the top of the pumpkin. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of string so I can hang these up in my window. This collection of pumpkins is hanging in front of my window. It looks great during the day and beautiful at night with those lights lit up. So I hope this inspired you to grab some paper lanterns and try your hand at making some pumpkins this fall.
For today's project, we're going to start with some hula hoops. Take your first 2 hula hoops and you're going to place them one inside the other. It's going to deform it a little bit, but that's all right. Take a zip tie and you're going to use it to join the 2 tops of the hula hoops. Pull it tight. Now the hula hoop's going to go a little crazy on you, but that's okay. You're going to put 2 of those together and they're going to be crisscross to each other. That's what's going to hold it in place. Go ahead and use your scissors. Take off the excess zip ties right there. And then what we're going to do is turn it over, and we got to do the same thing on the other side. That's what's going to hold these together. So again, use the zip ties, put them crisscross on each other, and make sure you pull them nice and tight. If it deforms the hula hoop a little bit, that's okay. Cut off the excess, and now it's time to put the third one in. This one can be a little tricky, but go ahead and put it on the inside. It's easier to work with. Again, using the zip ties, put them together. The hula hoops kind of want to go their own way, but use the zip ties and hold them in place. The more, the better. It is ready to go. We're going to take it outside and give it a nice paint job. Make sure the paint you use is good for plastic. Now, since we're making us a yard pumpkin, we want to use a nice orange spray. This covers really good, and you're just going to hang it up and paint every single bit of that plastic, anywhere that you have a color that you don't want. The next step is we're going to use some of these fairy lights. I went ahead and got the orange ones. They're really good, easy to get off Amazon. They come with a remote, and the great thing about them is they're 33 feet long. Plenty to cover all of your pumpkin, especially with this waterproof case for the batteries. Go ahead and zip tie the battery pack to the bottom. This way it'll have some weight on the bottom when you're holding it steady. Go ahead and take the fairy lights and start wrapping. Don't think that you're going to wrap too tight. Just put it on there. There's 33 feet of this, plenty to go. You're going to go up, down, and all around every one of the tubes. Once you go ahead and get to the end, just use a little bit of tape it off. Next, I got some 16 gauge wire. Use this and we're going to make the stem. I pre-drilled some holes with a drill, poked it through. Make sure you have plenty of wire and just wrap it around. It looks like a stem when you push it up there, and you're going to put 2 ends in. Pull it through, again wrap it around the hula hoops. That's what's going to help hold it together. And then you're going to want to shape it. I just went ahead and did a simple stem. The last step was some small fairy lights. These are only about a couple of feet long. Zip tie the control to the bottom, and what you're going to do again is wrap it all over around the stem. Go up and down and make sure you cover everything. If you have a little bit too much at the end, you can go ahead and start going back again. It is going to look great. Just get it all wrapped around. It's time to take it outside. Use some wire or tent stake to hold your pumpkin down, and there we are. Once nightfall comes, use the remote, and there you go. Now I did an orange one and a white one. And the great thing about these lights is the lights can flash and do 8 different modes. And wow, what a scene from the street. It looks amazing.
I spotted these styrofoam pumpkins. So I'm going to come in with some Krylon primer spray paint, and I'm going to give these a very light coat. And then I took them back inside and I took some acrylic paint to cover these pumpkins. I next came in with this pickling white wax from Dixie Belle, just in the indent lines. I also went over with a darker orange in the indent lines on some of the pumpkins. I'm going to take this dowel and I'm going to poke it down through the pumpkin. Then I'm just going to begin poking on my other pumpkins as well. Then I'm going to take this rustic bucket, I'm going to weigh it down with a rock, put some paper in, and then I'm going to push a styrofoam ball in there, and I'm going to push the end of the dowel into the styrofoam ball. I'm going to shove in some of this natural looking grass here, and then I'm also going to paint some of the stems of the pumpkins and stick them back in, and I'm going to decorate the tops of the pumpkins as well. I also made a little sign here for the top, and this is the finished look here. This looks so cute on my porch, and I'm so happy with how it turned out.
I wanted to cut off the corners of this big hunk of styrofoam, but I'm going to wedge this all the way down. We're going to start with some fresh plants. Then back here, I picked a couple of mums, and I had some scraps of dowel rods, some beautiful silk leaves, and push these down in the middle of my styrofoam here. I have things like pumpkins that we're going to add. So I just picked up things that I thought were nice for fall and nice color, but would raise up above. And I had one of these inexpensive chain leaf garlands left, so I'm just going to cut it apart and add some of these. Here is my beautiful urn, and it just adds so much down here at the bottom of my steps. We're going to cut these into, I have a 6-foot piece of wood trim. Use low temp glue and hot glue these on. What I'm going to do is take it and lay it on top of the styrofoam. 2 pipe cleaners, hook them together. I am going to wrap these around the wood and the garland. And then we're just going to take it and tighten it really tight, and then we'll come back and cut those off. And this is what you have now. I have gathered a selection of fall leaves and foliage, and we're just going to build this up with foliage now. So I'm going to take my fruit, I'm going to cut these skewers so it's a little shorter, and I'm going to start to add fruit to the styrofoam. So I have my little hook right here that I made. Yes. I'm going to use these kind of command strips. You're going to hook 2 of these together, them really tight, and then you're going to peel off to expose the sticky side. So we're going to stick this right on the back of the wood. And now we're just going to press that right against the door frame. The entire front door is all finished with these beautiful pieces down the side and a wreath and a part over the top to match.
So I grabbed this tomato cage and I took some Behr premium black matte spray paint and I took it outside and I spray painted just the vertical poles of the tomato cage. Once the spray paint was fully dry and I cut off the top portion of my tomato cage, I then came in with some very heavy jute twine. You just start at one spot on the circle and you just lay your jute twine over top and hold it there until the hot glue sets. Once the hot glue sets, you just take the jute twine and you wrap it all around the circle. And then I just finish it off by securing it with a bit of hot glue. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process on the other side of the tomato cage. This is my finished tomato cage plant stand. I actually made 2 to have an elevated look for my fall moms and my fall porch.
I'm going to take the corners and I'm just going to cut them with my wire cutters just like that. So we've cut that in 2. And then we're going to go to the opposite corner and we're going to cut it one more time. And now we have 2 equal pieces. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to attach the wire over top of this oak leaf. So I'm going to take my wires and poke them right down in the foam. There we have something to begin to build up. But I'm going to go ahead and start adding some of these to my styrofoam. You don't have a stiff enough stem. You're going to take inexpensive wood skewer, lay it right next to the stem, and then I'm going to take some floral tape, wrap it around the stem and around the wood skewer. I can trim it longer, like so, and have it come way down there. So that's how you're going to add things to your foam. I'm going to go ahead and continue to build this up. These tend to slide out, so you're going to want to add just a little bit of hot glue to secure that so that it does not come out. So don't be afraid to use your hot glue to attach things. I like to use these command hooks where the back slides off of them, and I would suggest that you use these. I stuck that up there, and all I have to do is lift this up and hook it right on that little hook. So here's the front door, and my wreath, and the lovely corners that frame the upper edge of my door. The very first thing I do is pick up my artificial pumpkin and I paint them. I need to draw a face on it, and now I am going to use my Versa tool, which is like a hot knife, to go ahead and cut out my shapes. I'm going to add the black paint. So this is all the pumpkins that I have done. We're going to take each one of the jack-o'-lanterns and drill a hole at the top and the bottom. After they're drilled on, we just slide each jack-o'-lantern right up the pole. And then we take another piece of the pool noodle and we slide that right over the PVC. So I have fired up the glue gun. We are going to take these leaves that we are just going to cover these. We just slide the smaller PVC pole into the bigger one, and voila! Now I have finished the cross piece, and my dear husband is going to climb up and put it up there. The piece of PVC just slides right into that elbow. You cut the hole in the bottom and you feed the lights through, and then you cut the hole in the top, and then you pull the lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff some plastic shopping bags down inside. I have gotten some Spanish moss that I'm going to drape out here. Here is our jack-o'-lantern arch during the day, all set and ready for nighttime to come.
I have one of those foam crafting pumpkins, and I want to make a hole in the top of this one and also in the bottom. Smaller pumpkin, and I'm going to cut a hole in the bottom. I have my drill, and I have a longer drill bit on it, and I'm gonna just drill some holes around each of the pumpkins. And I'm just taking a small amount of brown paint, and I'm just following the ridges of the pumpkin. I'm taking a small string of Christmas lights. I'm gonna pop some in there, and then I'm just gonna put the whole thing into the top of the middle pumpkin and run it out the bottom. Now I'm gonna glue the pumpkins together. And now I'm gonna add a stem. I cut some bittersweet vine from my backyard, and I'm just gonna wrap it around the sections of the pumpkins. And here's our
pick up 1 or 2 clear plastic bowls from Dollar Tree. Use a Sharpie to trace the outline. Take a wood-burning tool to create a hole in the bottom of the bowl. Take a light kit from Amazon and thread the socket through the hole and add a light bulb. A cheap way to create your own DIY pendant lights.
It's going to require 3 of these large dinner plates and then 3 of these little salad plates. Once you kind of find the design style that you like, grab a dollop of hot glue. I'm going to apply a generous amount. Then we can just secure our plate, apply some hot glue, and secure it there. But now we'll take our third salad plate, create about a 4-inch loop, fold our ribbon over, pinch in the middle. We're just going to snip off our ribbon. So apply a generous amount and place our bow right on top of our plates. And this is kind of like silver dollar eucalyptus. Place it inside our bow. And it does create kind of an unusual wreath frame.
You want to pick up 2 bowls, and I'm going to give them a coat of spray paint. I'm just going to use some really strong glue. I am going to add 3 wicks. Then I'm going to grab 2 wooden skewers, Dollar Tree tall pillar candles. Pour the wax from all the candles into a metal container. I'm opting to add a little essential oil, and now we're just going to pour that melted wax. You can trim the wicks down and use your candle. I hope this inspired you to grab a ceramic salad bowl.
Head to your local dollar store and pick up a clear plastic bowl, a metal flower vase, a floral foam square, and some faux flowers. Pull a wood candle lid from a used candle and remove the rubber ring. Spray paint this candle lid, the clear plastic bowl, and the metal flower vase. Use a strong adhesive and glue the candle lid to the bottom of the painted metal vase. Glue the painted bowl to the top of the candle lid. Give the entire footed pedestal bowl a light coat of white spray paint. Put some hot glue on the 4 corners of the square florist foam and glue it to the bottom of the bowl. Take pieces of faux greenery and stick them in and around the base. Next, take some bunches of faux flowers, stick the separated flowers into the florist foam. If you have any bare spots showing, fill those areas with a little green moss. Place the pedestal floral arrangement on a dollar store charger plate and surround it with green moss. I hope this inspired you to create a beautiful floral pedestal centerpiece for under $10.
You're going to need some dollar store solar lights. Flip the bowl upside down, and we need to remove the label. Next, I'm going to focus on the solar light. So we just take the stem off. We're not even going to need that. You need to open up the solar light and pull out the tag so that the solar light works. Then you can place that back on, and this part is ready to be used. This will be the base of our project. What I'll be using for this project for weight are these dollar store rocks. So I'm going to be placing them inside. For the next step, I'm going to place the solar light in top like this. I'll go ahead and add a few more rocks to this. So what I'm going to do is add a little dab of hot glue on each corner, like so. I'm going to take that bowl and flip it upside down and place it right there on top so it's centered. So just to show you, if I remove this out, you can see here, I would be able to pull this off and replace this easily with another dollar store solar light if this burns out at some point. Here they are in my dish flower garden, and I'm thrilled with how they turned out. So we're going to start this project with a platter from Dollar Tree. We're going to be using the back. So I'm first going to start by putting the E6000. What we're going to do though is we're going to take the beads and we're just going to place them right next to one another. All right, so now that we are finished with the gluing portion, what we're going to do next is we're going to be taking Rust-Oleum chalked paint, paint this whole surface. So we are going to be taking a printable that I've created, and then we're going to basically be kind of cutting the edges off. And then from there, we are going to take, I have glue, I have tacky glue, but you can also use Mod Podge. I'm going to start by lightly brushing it on the tray. You want to make sure that you're like evenly dispersing this. So we are going to place it over it with our glue. We're going to take an 18-inch wreath frame. We're going to take the loop under. We're going to pull it through that you're going to see a knot on the top. I'm going to be taking a ruler. We're going to go across. All right, so we're just going to keep going all the way up. I'm going to make sure it's centered. I'm going to use my hot glue, basically just to kind of cover that gap. And here's the after of my Dollar Tree plate DIY boho wreath.
Saw some candles from Pottery Barn. I thought it'd be fun to try making them myself. I'm going to put a little glue into a small container and then add a bit of paint. Now that I have the glue tinted, I'm going to paint it all over the glass dish on the outside. I'm going to leave these for a few hours before moving on. Using some Mod Podge, I'm going to paint it around the dishes. I can sprinkle the white glitter all over it, and then when it dries, the glitter will stay in place. I grabbed these pillar candles from the dollar store, and I'm going to melt them down. I'm just going to use a couple of skewers to hold the wicks in place. I want to add some essential oil to give my candles a beautiful scent. It's time to fill the glass dishes. The final thing to do is to remove the skewers and then trim the wicks. How pretty are these Pottery Barn inspired candles? They even smell as good as they look.
First step is you're going to want to drill a hole for drainage, and I'm just going to drill straight into that hole in the middle. And then we're going to get our bigger bit, and I'm going to take a junk brush to bond with the bowl above it. I've got my first strand of beads. I'm just going to take these one line at a time and just snip off the extra beads. And I'm going to repeat this process. I've got the stone texture applied. Now it's time to go in with my black spray paint. And here's a closer look at my DIY beaded flower pot.
Start to paint your pots and saucers with a matte finish paint or chalk paint. Take a paper napkin and separate the 2-ply layers. Draw a circle and cut it out with scissors. Take the saucer and brush the decoupage glue so the bottom and sides of the saucer are covered. Place the paper napkin circle and press down in the center and smooth the napkin out. Dip a small paintbrush in water and brush along the top of the saucer. Add a final layer of decoupage glue. Take a strong adhesive glue and place a ring of glue. Place the saucer on top of the bottom of the pot. You now have a beautiful clay pot candle holder.
I grabbed some china plates from the thrift store for this really easy garden project. Okay, this was the really fun part. I smashed the plates on a rock and then I set them all aside. Next, I mixed ready-mix concrete with water. For specific measurements and safety precautions, follow the instructions on the bag. I placed a 2-inch piece of cardboard tube on top of scrap wood to use as my mold, and then I put the first layer of concrete inside. I used a scrap 2x4 to tamper it down and added 3 small pieces of wire mesh. The wire mesh will add a lot of strength to this. I put another layer of concrete on, used the wood to tamper, and trowel to smooth it out. Once it was smooth and level, I placed the broken china on top. You can have a lot of fun with this part and do any sort of design. I used a scrap piece of wood again to tamper it down, making sure that the china was inset but not sunk in. Then I used a wet sponge to carefully remove the excess concrete. I wiped with the sponge a few times over the next couple of hours. After it dried for about 20 hours, I removed the cardboard around the outside and placed it in the garden for a beautiful stepping stone. I hope this inspired you to create your own thrifted china stepping stone.
Now these colorful bowls. You're going to turn it upside down. You're going to take that heat tool and just press down. And we're going to want to do that to a couple more of these. I'm just going to use this to trace. Start with one of the blue bowls and one of the clear ones, and I'm going to take some Gorilla Clear Grip. You're going to want to put this on and then let it sit. Make sure that you get this exactly right. One more blue bowl. Let that sit right there. You see how you can see the battery packs down at the base? I'm going to take some ivy. See how you can disguise that a little bit. Decided to add a few white poppies, and you can see how much light these will bring to a tabletop.
We're going to start by using a hot glue gun to glue these forms together. After we have them all glued, I got a piece of cardboard, traced one of the circles, and I'm going to cut just inside the line that I drew. And you're going to get your hot glue again. You'll just want to decide what color you're going to want to paint your form. And again, you could leave this just as is if you like something a little more simple. I like simple sometimes, but today I'm just going to take it up a couple notches with some color, and I'm just going to draw some shapes on here. So what I'm doing is putting a filler piece in the bottom and just popping that guy right on top. And we have our DIY flower pots all set up in my daughter's room. I think they turned out super cute and they match her room so well.
On one of my most recent trips to Dollar Tree, I came across these glass bowls, and as well I spotted these cool margarita glasses. I'm going to take some E6000 and I'm going to spread it around on the bottom of the margarita glass. And then I'm also going to apply some E6000 on the bottom of one of the glass bowls. Then I'm going to place it on top. I'm going going to leave this to set. In the meantime, I'm going to take my second glass bowl and I'm going to take some E6000 and I'm going to take an old drawer pull and then place that on top. And then I'm going to let this set as well for 24 hours. So this DIY is super easy. Honestly, anyone can do this.
Start to paint your pots and saucers with a matte finish paint or chalk paint. Take a paper napkin and separate the 2-ply layers. Draw a circle and cut it out with scissors. Take the saucer and brush the decoupage glue so the bottom and sides of the saucer are covered. Place the paper napkin circle and press down in the center and smooth the napkin out. Dip a small paintbrush in water and brush along the top of the saucer. Add a final layer of decoupage glue. Take a strong adhesive glue and place a ring of glue. Place the saucer on top of the bottom of the pot. You now have a beautiful clay pot candle holder.
I saw these lemons recently. I grabbed this stick outside. I'm going to snip them off the plastic branch that they came on. It's time to attach them to my real branch. It's time to add these beautiful faux lemons. I want the lemons to look natural, so I'm going to attach them under the leaves. To keep the tree securely in place, I'm going to use some floral foam. I'm going to use some of the bright green moss here to cover up that foam. My new mini lemon tree adds the perfect pop of color that I was looking for and was a breeze to put together.
I have some clear plastic Christmas ornaments stuck on some wooden skewers and popped into an old piece of styrofoam. I'm using some Krylon sea glass spray paint, and I have some nautical netting, and I'm going to put it around the ornaments. I'm just using a little hot glue to secure it at the top. I'm just going to let the glue set, and then I'm going to trim off the tops. To finish off our faux nautical floats, I'm using some jute. Look at them. They look like real glass, don't they? I love this project. They're so cute.
First, we're gonna spray paint. I'm using Rust-Oleum Satin Heirloom White and Rust-Oleum Stone. We're gonna take some painter's tape. You kind of wanna rough tear one edge of it. We're gonna put this along the bottom. I'm using a craft paint and I'm just using brushed gold. You kind of want to make it look like the paint is kind of tearing and you can see underneath it. All right, so here's the finished product and I absolutely love how they turned out.
I ran to Dollar Tree and grabbed some of their wood pieces, cut one of those in half, sand down both of my pieces. Then I used some wood glue to secure each of the half pieces to the ends of the full piece. So I grabbed one of the thinner wood pieces and measured it to fit on the front. I cut it again down the center lengthwise to make 2 thinner pieces. Next, I grabbed that smaller excess piece that I had set aside and I repeated that process of cutting it lengthwise to make 2 thinner pieces. I used some more wood glue to put all my thinner pieces together in a frame shape. I used my drill to pre-drill holes up through the bottom and into the half pieces. Then I added a small wood screw into each side for extra security. Once the wood glue was dry, I filled in any gaps with some wood filler and let it sit for about an hour before sanding it down. Once both pieces were prepped, I painted all of them with a couple coats of white latex paint. I grabbed a piece of cane webbing and placed it into some warm water for about 30 minutes. Then I removed it from the water and patted it dry, and I just cut that down to fit the thinner frame and used my staple gun to attach it. And I made sure I was pulling that cane web tight as I was stapling it. I used some more wood glue to attach that piece to the front of the larger wood frame. I added some heavy-duty D-rings to the back, and I ended up with this really neat wall shelf that could be used for many different things.
Next time you're at the dollar store, grab a large wreath form, 2 small wreath forms, and 1 3D wreath form. Assemble the 3D wreath form according to the instructions. Start to cut the wire rings from each other on the large wreath form and the 2 small wreath forms. Take the second to largest ring and place in the center of the wire globe. Take 2 of the second to smallest rings and attach them horizontally between the center ring and the bottom of the globe. Take the smallest rings and attach them horizontally to each end of the globe, securing with floral wire. Starting at the top of the globe, tie a piece of jute twine in a secure knot. Start to loop and weave the jute twine over and under. Once finished with one section, skip the section beside it and start to weave the jute in the next section in the same direction. Work your your way up the globe and weave the jute in every other section. Once you have the horizontal sections complete, start to weave the alternate sections vertically. Take a light cord and attach it to the top of the globe with the bulb hanging in the center of the globe. Use a very low wattage bulb that does not get hot. Hang your woven jute light fixture from a hook on the ceiling and turn on the light. Separate the layers of a patterned paper napkin. Cut the paper napkin as needed. Now we are going to actually iron the paper napkin onto the taper. Heat and iron to medium-low heat, not too hot. Let the candle cool and start to use in your own home decor. Fill a heat-safe container with hot water between 100 and 110 degrees. Place a taper candle in the hot water and let sit for 10 minutes. Paraffin candle works best for this. After 10 minutes, pull the candle from the water and then wrap the candle in some wax paper. Take a rolling pin and press down on the middle of the candle. Once the middle section is flattened, take the candle and gently twist it into the shape that you want. When you get the twist that you want, place the candle in cold water and this will set the candle in its new shape. Then, have fun displaying your new twisted taper candle. Take painter's tape and tape off sections on a taper candle. Make sure that the edges are pressed down securely on the edges of the tape. Once taped off, paint light coats of acrylic paint in the open sections of the candle in the color or colors of your choice. Let dry completely. Try displaying them in odd-numbered groupings and vary the height of your candlesticks. A variety of colors, textures, and patterns make the display even more interesting and unique.
I had this very cluttered and boring pantry closet. I cleaned out the closet, removed the shelves. I then grabbed some very colorful 12 by 12 inch vinyl tiles. Once I cut it, I simply peeled off the backing that comes on the tile and exposed the adhesive. I also used some painter's tape just to hold everything together. I used a little piece of painter's tape to mark where the hole was so that it would make it easier for me to reattach the clips later. I put the wire shelving back in place. I will admit, it did make me notice how dingy my wire shelving was. I purchased some sheets of plywood from the hardware store. I cut my plywood to the size of the shelving. I just added the plywood on top of the 1x3, and I used a nail gun to secure it in place. Once I had them all in, they looked great, but I definitely wanted to stain them to make them a little bit of a darker, richer color. The problem, for me, I really wanted it to look a lot lighter and brighter. I cleaned the cabinets thoroughly. I removed the cabinet pulls and then took the doors off of the hinges. This allowed me to paint the cabinets and the cabinet boxes. I painted them white and the process was very quick and easy. Once I applied a few coats and allowed that to dry, I put the cabinets back in place. I wanted to personalize the pulls a bit and I did so using some jute string. After that, it was time for me to work on the dark granite countertop. This project started with cleaning, lightly sanding, and then re-cleaning the counters. Next, I applied white paint from a marbling kit to the countertops. I applied a second coat, which covered a bit more. I applied a third coat as well. I painted on the lines using the gray paint that came in the kit. Then I softened those lines. After I got those looking the way I wanted them to, I added the epoxy on top. I purchased a silver peel and stick online. I wrapped the black dishwasher. Before you spend money on expensive tile, check out this $100 idea. I used shiplap and cut it to size the length of my kitchen wall, and then I painted it using a paint sprayer. I placed my first piece in the kitchen and I made sure to mark where the outlets were. I needed to cut just the little tongue part of the shiplap to make sure that it would not go over the outlet area. I did this using a tool called a multi-tool. It worked well for me and was really quick. I simply placed the shiplap in place and secured it using a nail gun. I continued this way up the wall. It took me 4 pieces of shiplap to get to the top of the backsplash and fit right underneath the cabinet. After that, I put my new appliances in and added little trim pieces to the edges to give my project a finished look. After updating this 1980s kitchen, I knew it needed something more. So I decided to use an adhesive tile mat along with mosaic tile sheets, white grout, and a sponge. The adhesive mat comes on a roll. When it came to the outlets, I made sure the power was off and I simply cut the mat with a razor blade so that I could create an opening around the outlet and disposal switch area. When I was ready to place the tile, I removed the white cover sheet. You can use spacers when installing the tile sheets, but I felt comfortable working without them. The work progressed pretty easily, and I was lucky that at the first corner, the tiles ended in just the right spot. When I got to the second corner, I wasn't quite so fortunate. My husband was helping me out at the tile saw while I was doing the installation, and he went ahead and cut right down the tile mosaic sheet for me. When I got to the outlet and light switch area, I was able to press the tile into place just very lightly, and then cut away the tile. I added the grout and then went over it with a damp sponge to get the grout residue off of the tile surface. I rinsed and repeated the cleaning with the damp sponge several times.
We started with a completely bare backsplash. Measure the length and height of each panel will need to be cut to. Now mark the panels to the correct size to be cut and cut them with the saw of your choice. I used a jigsaw and a table saw to make the cut. I found it easiest to lay the panels flat on the ground in a line as I cut them to make sure they lined up exactly. Next, you will need to take the panels in and mark where notches may need to be cut in order for the panels to fit under the cabinets. Take a tube of toothpaste and squirt a little on the corners of each outlet. Then slide your panels into place. Then remove them again and the toothpaste will have transferred to the back of the panel, showing where you need to cut the hole for the outlet. Now you're ready to set your panels in place. First, put construction adhesive on the back of the panels and then press them into place. Use a nail gun or panel nails to attach the panels into place. Now it's time for the faux finish. Sporadically paint the bricks various colors. I use white, tan, black, gray, and brown. Then use a wet rag to blend all the colors together. Lastly, spread the spackle on like a thin coat of icing.
So this is grout, like what you would use for towel. It's pre-mixed. Where the border would be on the brick, it's where you're gonna put this stuff with your fingers.
Today's project starts with a few end tables that you can pick up from your local Walmart or IKEA, and they're simple to put together. Put a wheel on the bottom to make this table mobile. Get a nut that will fit on the end of those threads, and we've got to glue it to the bottom of the leg. But we want to make sure we add a washer to give it some strength, because we're going to use a 2-part epoxy. We're going to take the epoxy and put it around the edge of the bolt next to the washer, and on the bottom of our table, turn it on its side, and we've got to glue a piece of strip of wood on the bottom. Go ahead and just put some around the hole on the bottom of the leg, and we're going to take that little invention we did with the washer and the nut and stick it right on there. Make sure it gets nice and secure. That allows us now to screw the wheel into the bottom of the leg. Gotta join these 2 tables together. Once you get it all on there on all 4 corners, go ahead and stick the other table right on top. Once it dries up in about 20 minutes, it's super strong and it's time to paint it. Went ahead and put these 3 boards in for the base, and they sit there really nice. It also gives some strength, but it's time to finish the top. I want to use some contact paper.
I started with a pre-cut pine board that I bought from Lowe's that was about the same size as the stainless steel film that I bought on Amazon. The board was a little bit longer, but I measured and cut off 3 inches. I wanted the stainless steel to wrap around the edges of the board. For the legs, I measured and cut 1x3 and 1x4 inch pine boards to 32 3/4 inches. Using wood glue and brad nails, I completed 4 legs. For the shelves, I cut 1x3 inch pine, making 2 boxes, which I glued and nailed in place. I made 2 of these shelves. I attached the legs to the outside of the bottom shelf. Then I flipped it upside down and attached the top shelf the exact same way. For the bottom shelf, I measured and cut 9 1x4 inch pine and glued and nailed them into place. For the sides of the island, I added 1x3 inch pine cut to form the shape of a V, and I glued and nailed them on each side. For the feet, I cut squares out of 1x3 and then attached casters to those squares. They were glued and nailed in place on the bottom of each leg. I laid the top in place and measured around to make sure that it was an equal distance. Then I nailed it in place. I carefully laid the film on top and smoothed it, pulling the film a little bit at a time and smoothing it into place. For the edges, I bent the film over the sides and stapled them in place. I folded the corners as you would wrap a gift and stapled those in place.
To start, you'll need 3 Parsons end tables, and I purchased mine at Walmart. I put 2 of the tables together. It was really easy. All you had to do was screw in the legs. For the third table, I didn't use the legs, and I drilled the holes just a little bit bigger so I could fit rolling wheels in them. Use some E6000 or glue of your choice and put it on the bottom of the legs on 2 of your tables. Stack your tables on top of the tabletop with the wheels.
I wanted to create a dimensional wood wall. I decided to use wood shims. I stained the wood shims using a water-based stain. I stained the shims in varying degrees, some with just 1 light coat and others with up to 7 coats to make them nice and dark. I started attaching the stained wood shims to the wall using construction adhesive. I found it best to first place the long pieces in a random pattern on the wall and then overlay these with the shorter pieces. This way, I was building up the wall dimensionally as well as varying the color throughout. There were some gaps between the pieces, and so I had to cover these with smaller pieces at the end. When it came to the light switch on the wall, I just worked right up to the switch, and then the wall was done. For 2 days worth of work and about $120 in materials, I was able to transform this wall into something that I really love. If you have damaged walls like I did, this budget-friendly repair requires no drywall skills whatsoever. I ran down to the hardware store and picked up 2 sheets of beadboard. Then I measured and cut the beadboard down to size. I attached it to the wall with my nail gun. The next step was to add a wood border to the top. In order to finish off my beadboard accent, I added hooks. After that, I added my towels and a new shower curtain, and my quick little bathroom upgrade was complete.
First thing I did was grab these brick panels. They're about $30 from Lowe's, and I'm placing them against the wall. Next, I am nailing the paneling into the wall, and of course you could use something like liquid nails if you would like. However, I decided to do nailing since it's a little bit less permanent and won't ruin the drywall underneath. Now I'm just going to use some spackling that goes from pink to white whenever it's dry, and I'm going to fill in all of the seams. Now I'm mixing various craft paints to match the color of the brick. And I'm covering up that white plaster and using a sponge to add some more texture. Also going in and lightening the color a little bit and wiping it away. Overall, I just want a lot of variety. Now in sections, I'm going to cover the wall with white paint. And then once it's dried a little bit, but still a little bit tacky, I'm going in with a wet sponge and scraping away a lot of the color. So in 48 hours, I was able to turn this cold dining room into a warm, cozy, inviting space. And I absolutely love how much character it has now.
So I headed to the hardware store and picked up some 1x4s. I measured the wall and marked out where my boards would go on the wall. I made sure it was level and then used a nail gun to attach the boards vertically to the wall. Now I could measure down for the horizontal boards. Then I cut the horizontal boards and attached them. I cut the board around the outlet area and left plenty of space around it so that I wouldn't have any problem plugging things in the future. I caulked the inside edges of my newly formed accent wall boxes. Once this dried, I sanded down the joints. I picked out a blue color that I thought would look soothing in the room, and it only cost me $30. That was the cost of the wood, since I didn't have to pay for the paint, since it's something that I reused from a previous project.
I printed a deer design from my computer and traced it on a clear Ziploc bag. I cut a square hole in the cardboard box using a utility knife. Next, I taped the Ziploc bag design over the hole. Then, I placed the box in front of the wall. I turned my cell phone light on. I put it inside of the box at the opposite end as the design, and I closed the lid. Put covers over the windows. I traced the design on the wall using a pencil. Once I was done, I turned the lights back on and was ready to paint. I was careful to work from top down and left to right so I didn't smudge the wet paint. When it was completely dry, I removed the remaining pencil marks with an eraser and damp rag. And here's my stunning wall feature for only the cost of paint. It really gave this book nook a wow factor and has made 2 boys very happy.
I fell in love with this beautiful floral fabric, and I knew it would be perfect on my office wall. We measured the wall to make sure we purchased enough. We knew we needed 3 panels, so we had them cut accordingly. We started in the corner and used a staple gun to secure the fabric in place. After that, we used spray adhesive to ensure the fabric was well secured. Before drying starts, gently smooth out all air bubbles. Don't forget to overlap about an inch with each panel for a smooth transition, and line up your patterns as best you can. Once all panels are hung, smooth and staple along the bottom about 1/4 of an inch above your baseboard. Using an X-Acto knife, cut fabric starting in the top corner going down. This will help to make sure the fabric does not stretch or tear. Place your knife between the baseboard and a credit card to help you make the perfect straight line. Gently cut around any outlets using your X-Acto knife and a credit card. And there you have it, a fun and easy change to any room.